do we see a generational shift? I mean, while I'm the immigrant who has come here, and the main media may be reluctant to come and talk about consumption of something because by the time they get used to my accent and all that, given the sound bites of it could be a problem. But are we hopeful that as the generation shift, firstborn, are we going to see that change? Because if you are saying that it's a business decision, well, survival of the media may depend on really representing the faces of the diversity of our communities. That's so right. Let's talk a little bit about youth engagement and how, and on the other hand, I'm shaking when I hear, the industry, the sector is going through challenges of finances, so what are we pushing the kids to become, Mm-hmm. So, but I'd like us to talk a little bit about that generational shift and how that may be.
What changes you can make without spending money necessarily. I mean, I find being an independent filmmaker and not necessarily giving myself into the business side of things for conscious choices. When we start thinking about change, we always start seeing people's face, oh, what kind of money am I going to have to spend? I don't think you have to necessarily always spend money. And you can find resources, working with youth especially, in my experiences, I've always volunteered my time and been more than happy to make a change, because especially when there's education that they know and change needs to be made for themselves, for the better of themselves, for the better of their children, they will put in their time, they will put in resources. And I think that I don't think that will solve all of the problem when it comes to that. There, of course, money is always an issue, and I think advertising is one thing, but government support is another thing. So.
Well, speaking from the government support, I'm also in the same boat. A lot of people think we always have a lot of money, and we don't. The multiculturalism side usually doesn't. And this is just a side note. Usually it's, I know the immigration side usually does, because there's a lot more ties to, economics and so on and so forth, and job creation and everything like that. But when you look at things like that, it leaves out, for instance, First Nations and participation in multiculturalism and things like that. So government multiculturalism doesn't necessarily have a bunch of money support around that. But actually, to go back to your question before, just around youth engagement, around multiculturalism, we spend a lot of time developing resources for youth, recognizing that they're the ones that are going to change when it's, people by the time they're in their 20s or so, to tell them about multiculturalism, anti-racism, they've already got their ideas set. There's no, the ship's already sailed, So really the focus is on the youth. And a lot of what we're getting right now is that in the Lower Mainland anyways, kids are really there. They're there already. They're going to school. They've got multicultural schools. They're on Facebook. They're using new technology, new media, and they're connecting in ways that older generations weren't doing. And for instance, we had an anti-racism facilitator that was doing focus group testing for us, and he's an anti-racism facilitator, and his own kids, he asked them about what we were doing. They're like, oh, the kids were like, we're there already. Like, they don't talk about multiculturalism, they don't talk about anti-racism, they're not really interested in it. It's something they already have. They're interested in things like the environment. So in terms of, those are things. Multiculturalism it's not something that they think of, but I think that's interesting because the media is not really there in terms of how they're consuming media and mainstream media broadcast. But they're engaging in other ways with the social media and everything, which does reflect, I feel, a lot better the diversity that they have around them and everything.
Well, and when we were in Montreal round table, half the people who were there, they were 30 years and under, and they were saying, well, what media are you talking about? Are you talking about TV, newspaper? Well, that's not us. Yeah, I mean, it clearly came out. I mean, they have even their own language. That's not ethnicity, no language, I may laugh out loud. You know that my children don't. I mean, I'm almost getting annoyed. They are writing English in a short form. It's like so.
Every day says they write LOL, in
Yeah,
a formal
LOL
template.
LF or something.
I think LOL is what really. Sorry, I don't know the right word. Makes a lot of other people uncomfortable when used for younger people. I don't know. I think. Sorry, my point was something else. I'm kind of getting confused here. I think helping youth is, in my experience, has been very powerful. My friend and colleague is not here at the moment, Natalie Lozano, and she's running my circle action team, and she's the project manager at Immigrant Service Society. My circle is Multicultural Youth, which is a training program for cultural youth, new immigrants, and you know it's such a particular case in every single case. At what age the youth come here, where from they come, and where they move to, and it's so diverse. You can't you can't control it and say, you know. The school I went to, I know that there was a lot of racism, and I went to a West Side school. You know, I went to East Side, Van East High School, and I went to a West Side school, and it felt like there was less of it. I don't know why. Maybe they had more resources to work. It doesn't matter. But again, what my friend is doing they didn't hire anyone to do work. They meet every week, and they have different projects, and they apply for funding. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't, but they work with what they have. They train youth to be community leaders, to take their own initiatives, to run their own projects, find money if they have to, and they always, they knock on many doors, and some open, and I think to train youth that can, through this generational thing, that's been what's happening, generation after generation, they've been training, the youth who were trained are training now, and it just gets passed on, and this whole generation after generation, and I think that's very important to consider as a way of not necessarily focusing on helping this youth, but kind of what is that saying? Teach a man how to fish or give fish, something like that. Yeah. Anyways, so, that kind of deal. Something about fishes. I'm not sure. Do you know?
I think.
Sorry, give a man a fish.
Yes.
Feed him for a day.
Then
Teach him how to
how
fish.
fish benefit for life. Yeah. One issue we have to bear in mind too is that even the most traditionalist, in the media sector, understands that. Things have changed. The media is no longer the same. So it's not really a generational issue, whether it's for the 15 or 20-year-olds. Even 60-year-olds now are bending backwards, just trying to kind of be part of the times, because it's almost like a tide. If you don't try to kind of adapt to it, you are going to be left behind. You're going to be forgotten.
My dad's on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, so that's one thing to bear in mind, and that's why all the traditional media, because we are talking about the convergence of medias now, the newspapers are struggling big time, not just here, but every part of the world, because basically the way it's going, chances are that in the next 10, 15 years, at most, we're not going to have newspapers again. We will likely have, you people go online and the rest of them, you have a one-stop gadget that provides, both your internet, your cell phone, your phone, your television and everything, all kind of put together. Having said that, we have to begin to understand that, yes, that's the direction things are going. And that if you're talking about empowering youths, that kind of stuff, then basically we have to make it the focus of whatever efforts. So not trying to delineate the different newspapers or television, newspaper, radio and stuff like that, because that's the decided shift. Things are kind of going with the media. So you raised a very important point, which is the economic challenges the newspapers are facing. I remember when I first got here, in 2000, I took part in a roundtable discussion with one of your colleagues, Daphne Braham, and a number of other, editors. It was sponsored by the Aga Khan Foundation, and we were dealing with international coverage, because part of their frustration was that in the 70s and 80s, Canadian media were all very influential, or they have reporters, in different parts of the world. Today, there's no Canadian news media that has a reporter in Africa. We're talking about the whole continent of Africa. The last person who was there was operating from South Africa for a Global Mail. So you have one person covering an entire continent. Okay, I mean, so one person covering a country is bad enough. One person covering an entire continent is a different matter altogether. But having said that, we understand those funding challenges, we understand those economic challenges, and most media organizations are going through that. And that's all the more reason why the youths need that empowerment. Because we're talking about new media, and one thing the new media has done is it has helped democratize media production. You no longer need to be the expert, okay, to be able to do media. I mean, there are all kinds of blogs now and the rest of them, you know. Of course, some of their issues are very conspiratorial. Some of them, you know, you can't count on their veracity or whatever. But there are two issues. The first is the notion of the expert who studies in a journalism school and comes set prepared with the traditional news values, the who in the news, okay? Because like when this kind of challenge, economic challenges, the budgetary issues come up, the first thing is you have to prioritize. And in prioritizing, at the best of times, you usually go for the important people in society, you know. I mean, they're the newsmakers. The rest and the rest of them, you know, don't quite fit the paradigm. So if at the best of times, when you have all the resources, you still focus on the important people, how much more when you're facing budgetary cutbacks? And then that's all the more reason, that's even all the more reason why you're under a lot of pressure to even abandon them and jettison them and not think they're important, you know, in the overall scheme of things. So, but that's where the new media comes in, because all you need to do is provide some of these kids some basic tools. It does two things. It saves you a lot of money. Two, you let them tell their own stories. And it's not as if they tell their own stories and kind of immediately move it to your website, you know, or the pages of the Vancouver Sun. It will still have to go through some traditional gatekeeping. The editor, you know, that kind of stuff, still have to go through that to be sure that, you know, this wouldn't make expose the company to either legal issues, you know, or whatever. But the truth is that if we empower them to tell their stories, they are going to reflect their issues and values more than anyone else. And much more importantly, they have a sense of belonging. And also, nobody, no matter how well-intentioned an outsider is, he can never tell other people's stories as well as they can tell them. So if you provide them the basic resource, like I said, you know, it could be just some small digital, you know, resources and the rest of them. Have a deal with them. You can even probably end up paying them almost next to nothing compared to what you pay to the big reporter, you know, that kind of stuff. You're going to get more news stories. You are going to get more diversity in terms of even what the issues are. Because sometimes you can stay in your office and you don't feel like this is important to cover. But when you provide them the resources and the rest of it, you'll be surprised the kind of different stories and different perspectives on different issues that are so important to their communities and the rest of them, you know, that they're going to cover. So going back to the language issue, English, anybody who comes, not anybody, but most people who come here, try to learn English. So the diasporic media is going to be there. The ethnic language media is going to be there. But the key issue is when people from those ethnic communities look at the mainstream media and have a sense of belonging that, you know, they are representing our interests, they are representing our issues, they are representing our values, you know, that kind of stuff. That doesn't stop the ethnic media from doing their own thing.